Hi folks, Stevie here. For the last year or so, I've been trying to learn video editing by making short films about motorcycle touring. I'm trying something new today. I'd like to share details of a breakdown that I had with my Honda CRF 1000 in the hope that the action we took at the roadside and the final repair might be useful to other owners. Earlier in the year, myself and a few riding buddies headed down to Wales to enjoy some new twisties. Everything was going great until the bike started giving problems.
Oh, my bike's dead. Bike's dead. Aye, no power. I'm trying to coast. Right, does the majority of you want to continue on somewhere safe? It's been a problem that started a couple of nights ago, but it hasn't cut out. I had problems getting my ignition switch to contact, but I believe I had resolved it. Aye, somebody head up ahead and see for somewhere safe. It's just completely dead electrically. It's not making any contact on the switch. I can check like the battery leads are no loose or anything like that, but there's no reason for the battery leads to be loose. Is there something up there, Alan? How far is it? Let's give a wee tour then. Pardon me. Right, anywhere that you feel safe. Right.
So it's worth mentioning, when the problem started, our cameras were already recording, so we made a point of leaving them on to see if it might add something to our next film.
Oh, no, it's not loose battery. Oh, yeah, a wee puff of smoke there. Yeah.
See the smoke, mate? That's the fuck doing that.
Did you see another bit of smoke?
Aye.
More smoke? Yeah.
Stevie,
Hello.
what's wrong with it?
I think there's the sticky contacts inside the ignition switch. I've actually heard people reporting of this before. I'll flush it out. Straight away, first time. Actually, I think I've got bigger problems, guys, because it's running, but I think it's running on the battery. So I don't think it's charging. I've only got all my lights are off. I've only got 12.5, 12.6 volts, and my Optimate isn't charging just now. So because that drops out under 13 volts. So. I mean, anyway, all I can do is ride the it doesn't make any difference. Keep an eye on it. I've not got a battery light on, no. I've only got 12.7 volts. I know, I think, because when I switch my battery off it drops to about 12, sorry. When I switch the engine off, it drops to about 12.3. So it's charging, but it's not charging as much as it usually. It usually charges at about 13.5.
We continue south through Beth Gellert, Aberglasslyn and Penryn Didrith towards Portmeirion. Back on the bikes, we continued on the route we had planned, back through Transfinned, down to Bronaber, and across the hills on a series of cracking wee back roads to Lake Vyrnwy. The sun was shining, we were all buzzing, but the bike had other ideas.
Oh, that's my bike out again. Hang on.
So I'll try to get it. Does it show any arcing inside it? In fact, if I could move the wires about before I move the keys in the on position.
Maybe it's more than
I think that's just...
It's just all that there.
Aye,
Just going
that's
there.
the immobiliser.
Aye,
It's not
the
that one,
immobiliser.
it's whatever. The wire going that.
Oh! What did you move?
Oh, smoking, what's...
Down there. See the bottom wire?
Right.
See the big one?
Sorry, it's just a WD-40 Burman. Is it? Aye.
Aye, down there.
That one,
You want
that-
to get into the bottom. You might be able to see if you put a cable tie that to one side or something. It
Might hold it.
cure the problem.
Lights on and off, lights on and off. Lights on and off. Right, that's you on. That's you. What's the connection in there?
Right. You can see the
Shoe
smoke
on.
pushing out the yuckies that GoPro.
Oh!
This was something you would say to you.
Get it again.
Well, wiggle it.
Aye, because it'll catch the smoke coming up.
Oh yeah.
It's smoked there anyway. It's smoking. I've got it in video.
Smoking. Right.
Smoking. Big time smoking.
Right, is it on again? Right, so what you want to do is...
That'll close a loop.
Aye, but what are you arm on that, right? Right, that's
you
you
go.
going.
Keep going.
This one.
Keep the road. Right, I need to admit defeat now. Get call breakdown. Hi there.
Do you need tools and that?
I've got tools. We're just at the point of admitting
Need a new
defeat.
bike. What's wrong with that? Ignition switch is
Got a loose connection in the ignition switch, and it's
right.
making or breaking me. Sometimes it'll stay in, sometimes it won't. But we can't get it to stay in, so
You got some pliers and stuff?
I've got absolutely everything I could need in that regard. I'm just about to call for a breakdown recovery because I don't think we'll be able to budget to get it going again. So, but thanks for stopping. Appreciate it.
Thanks very much,
Cheers.
pal. Thank you.
The other thing you can do, Stevie, it's a total bodge. Just cut that sheath and try
Oh,
and
I'm
bridge
not
it out.
cutting. I'm not cutting it on the roadside.
Try and
Absolutely no way.
try and
I
bridge
wouldn't
it
do
out.
it. I wouldn't do it. I've not got a wiring diagram or mate. Let's just how to
We get a signal.
we get a signal and then I'll phone our AC. Are you alright? Give us a tow for a bit till we
aye.
get some service.
I'm going to use your phone again.
Aye.
That's why I see what these bolts are.
The camera or the...
Camera. I think I got it there.
Electrical tape.
Electrical tape, I've got electrical tape there.
You've not got two spade connections, have you? A male and a female. Because we're going to need to disconnect this tonight.
Aye.
Either that or disconnect the battery.
Right.
So you've got a choice. Is it easy?
Easier to disconnect that than disconnect the battery.
This will be a good fix to get up the road Thursday.
Aye.
This'll
No, I think it's worth the
No,
road. I'll
keep it-
continue on the run.
run going. There's no worries there.
Aye. Do you know I was on the point of giving up? Oh man!
Look at this. It's alive!
It's alive. I'll probably better burn it back a bit further. Getting a good connection. Oh, you want to disconnect this again tonight?
Aye, I'll disconnect it tonight. Aye.
Right. Twist it and tape it. And that'll do us.
I mean, you could always go into Halford and buy 2 spades in the morning.
Yep. Team effort. Fucking lights and
No man, I
tools
was
and-
for giving up. I was for getting the tow rope out and
Right, so you don't need the key then?
I still need the key for HIS.
Yeah, HISS.
That picks up the chip and sends to the ECU.
I'm a bit emotional.
Good thing, brilliant boys! Nothing will defeat the COVID Dodgers!
And with that, we were back on the road. It was getting late, so we decided to head back to our digs in Clandudno to celebrate our successes on the road.
Stephen, you want to say anything at all?
I'd say thank you very much for the team fixing my motorbike and getting us back on the road. Do that.
Cable tie it on it, and you held it on.
I've no cable tied on yet, on a minute.
Aye.
But it's just to break the circuit.
There you go. All done. Fixed.
So we left Halfords and enjoyed an hour or so exploring the Great Orme. Our route home to Glasgow would take in the Sportsman's Arms, the highest pub in Wales, the Tanhill Inn, the highest pub in England, and the Wanloch Head Inn, the highest pub in Scotland. Our temporary fix allowed me to continue on tour and enjoy another 500 miles of some of the best motorcycling roads that Britain has to offer. Back home, it was time to fix the bike properly. I visited my local Honda dealer to pick up a replacement lower contact section for the ignition switch assembly. The terminals for the ignition switch are buried deep under the airbox, which requires all the fairing panels and tank to be stripped before it can be removed. The two-piece construction of the ignition lock is very fiddly, with lots of small components that need to be repositioned in an area that is difficult to access. You need to remove the top yoke to be able to rebuild it properly. Give yourself a full shift to replace the ignition switch if you find yourself having to go down this route. So we take the large spring and we secure it into its position on the bottom contact section. Then we'll use a guide wire. I'm using a very small Allen key through the hole in the middle of the switch. To guide the tiny spring down the centre line into its home position. So then we'll offer the Allen key into the shaft to centralise everything and slide the assembly down into its home. We can then remove the Allen key and put the cap over the locking mechanism. And then I can finally put 3 brand new screws in there because the old ones have become chewed up. and I don't want to run into problems in the future. Now that the ignition switch is rebuilt, it's worthwhile testing that the ignition switch remains smooth and consistent in action. If either of the springs are missing, the lock won't function correctly. The springs are not listed in the Honda service manual, the Haynes manual, nor do they appear in the Honda spares diagram. Don't ask me how I know. If the tiny central spring is missing, the ignition lock won't turn clockwise into the on position. If the larger outer spring is missing, the ignition lock won't turn anti-clockwise to engage the steering lock. This is only likely to be an issue if you tear the bike apart at the side of the road, or if you try to do the job without removing the top yoke. Access around the lock in situ is deliberately poor, so it's difficult to keep an eye on exactly how the piece comes apart when it's in place. If you do need to make an emergency repair at the roadside, don't be as concerned as I was at the prospect of taking a pair of snips to the heavy plastic conduit that runs into the bottom section of the lock. On the CRF 1000, there's only 2 wires in there, which switch the main power supply to the bike. Once the conduit that runs to the bottom of the lock is cut, bear the wires back, twist them together as was seen in this film, and cable tie the conduit to the bars. Knowing what I know now, this is without doubt the course of action I would take if ever found myself in that position again. My hesitancy to do this was based on my experience of changing ignition locks on older bikes where you have 6 or 7 cores running down into the lock, switching different circuits. When there are only 2 wires in the contact section, like on the CRF 1000, it's impossible to go wrong. And for once, the HISS system will actually work in your favour. Even though you're hot wiring the main power supply to the bike, it still won't start unless a key is put into the top section of the ignition lock. So that wraps everything up. I hope this video is useful to other owners who find themselves with the same problem, especially if it crops up on tour. If you found it useful, please give us a wee thumbs up and feel free to have a look at my other videos.